Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this quick tutorial, we're going to learn how to build a serverless patient appointment reminder system. At the end of this tutorial, you learn how to use services like AWS Lambda, EventBridge, DynamoDB table, SES, and then Amazon Connect. Let's get right into it. So a quick overview of how the system works. So basically, we have a database which stores our patient's details, and then each morning we go into our database using the Lambda function to check to see which patients have their appointment due on that said day, and then we initiate an outbound call to those agents using Amazon Connect. And then if the agent wants to confirm the appointment, they are prompted to press 1 or either press 2 to reschedule. If they want to reschedule, what we do is using Amazon Connect, we create a task and then an agent will rather call that said patient to help or assist them with the appointment. So let's get right into the implementation. All right, so we are going to start by first creating our database. So I'm going to search for DynamoDB. So basically, DynamoDB is a NoSQL database on AWS. So I'm going to create a table in DynamoDB. So once I come here, I'll click on create table and I'll give my table a name. I'm going to call my table patient appointment, and then I'll give it a partition key called patient_ID, and then the sort key of appointment date. So why we need a partition key and the sort key for this project is this: because the hospital has patients and then each patient is identified with a unique patient ID, we are adding the appointment date so that we can return from our database a unique appointment, right? So for example, a patient with ID say 1 might have multiple appointments with the same hospital, which will come in say different dates. So what happens is by combining the partition key and the sort key, we can return a unique appointment date or unique appointment details from the database. So that basically it. I'll select customize settings and leave everything as default and then click on create table. So now that we have our table, we will proceed to create our Lambda function. So we are going to create 2 Lambda functions. So I'll just search for Lambda, then I'll open my Lambda. So I'm going to create the first Lambda function. I'll click on create. I'll call my Lambda daily reminder trigger. And in the runtime, I'm going to select Python. So basically the runtime is the programming language in which your Lambda is going to be written. I'll leave everything as default for now and then I'll click on create Lambda. Alright, so now that our Lambda is created, for the purpose of this tutorial, I already have the Lambda code. So I'm just going ahead to paste it and then I'll quickly walk us through. So it's a very simple Python code. I'll do all to give you guys access in the GitHub repo as we do always. So basically this is our code. So inside our code, we start by first importing a few libraries, that's Boto3 and some few other stuff. And then we are creating or setting some few environment variables, which we are going to do shortly. And then inside our code, we are basically performing a DynamoDB scan operation. So we are looking into the DynamoDB table to see which of the appointments, right, is happening on that particular day. Remember, the system is going to call individuals who have the appointment due on that day. So we are just performing a scan operation and then we are getting the set date that is for that particular day. And then we are trying to see all those people having their appointment status set as pending, right? So we are getting all those people. Then after that, we use the start outbound voice contact API of Amazon Connect to initiate an outbound call to the patients to remind them that today is their call center. So there are some few values that we have to fix in here. That is some few environment variables. So I'm going to proceed to do that. So I'll click on configuration, and under configuration, I'll click on environment variables. So I'm going to add all those environment variables, and then I will later on show you how to get the various keys. So the first thing we need is table name. I'll add the value later on. We need a connect instance ID. So the Amazon Connect instance ID, I'll show you guys how to get that. Our contact flow ID. So basically the contact flow in Amazon Connect is where your user experience is defined, right? When the call is initiated to the customer, what is going to be the experience? And I have the source phone number. So basically this is the phone number that is going to initiate the outbound call. So for now, I'll quickly go back to my DynamoDB table and then pick my table name. So my table is patient's appointment. I'll just put that value in here and I'll click on save for now. We will come back to this page again. Let me come back into my code. So this is it for this said function. Let's proceed to work on the permissions required for this particular Lambda function. Just by looking at the code, I know we are doing DynamoDB scan operation and then we are calling the start voice contact. So we need to give the Lambda the permissions to do these two things. So I'll once again come to configuration, click on permissions, and then I'll click on daily trigger. So basically this is the role that was created by a Lambda function, right? Because we didn't use any existing and then you add the Lambda function to create a default. So this was the role that was created by it. So I'm going to proceed to create an inline policy and then add the necessary permissions. So the first permissions we need is, because in our Lambda code we are performing a scan operation, I'll search for DynamoDB. Then I'll look for scan. So this is it. I'll select it. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to just select all. And then I'll add the next permission. The next permission is for Amazon Connect, for us to do a start voice contact in Amazon Connect. So I'm going to search for connect. And now under connect, I'm going to look for start outbound voice contact. So I'll select this and then I'll select all again and then I'll proceed. So these are the two permissions we need for this said Lambda. So I'm going to name my policy. Then I'll click on create. So now we've created or we've modified our role by adding our inline policy. And then if you look at the permissions, you have the connect, start, outbound voice contact, and then the scan operation. So this is it with this Lambda function. I'll proceed to quickly create our second Lambda function. So I'll just duplicate this and I'll create function. I'm going to call this process connect response, again in Python 3.13. Leave everything as default and then I'll create it. So I'm going to proceed to update my Lambda code once again and then I'll quickly walk us through what we have. So this Lambda code is not much different from the first one. So as usual, we are doing some regular imports and then we are setting a few environment variables. The same, they are very similar, just that there are a few others too. So in here, we have a table name, we have a notification email for this test, the connect instance ID, and some few other stuff. So basically, what this Lambda is doing is, when we initiate an outbound call to our patients, and then the patient inputs their response, that is whether they confirm their appointment for that said day or whether they choose to reschedule it. What happens is the event comes in through connect and then it comes into our Lambda function and then we proceed to do our processing. So one of the things we do is, one, we update our DynamoDB table based off the response we got from the customer, and then also we send a notification email to, say in our case, the hospital staff or whoever is supposed to check that. and then we send the email basically through SES. And another thing we do is to check. So if the patient chose to reschedule, what we will do is we will use the start task contact API to create a task which will be sent to an agent, and the agent can then follow that up by initiating a call to the customer or to the patient to assist the patient to reschedule their appointment. So that's basically all that the Lambda is doing. So now I'll proceed to go and set the environment variables as we did in the last Lambda. So I'll click on configuration, environment variables, then I'll click on edit. So the first one is table name. We have notification email. So basically this email is to the recipients, right? In our case, it can be a nurse or a doctor or whoever is attending to that patient. Then we have a task flow ID. And then we have our task template ID. So I'll click on, before that, let me just copy my DB table name and populate that. And then I'll input the email. So the email I'm going to input is going to be one of my personal emails. I'll click on save for now. We will come back to complete or fill the other spaces. Now let's proceed to work on the permission for this Lambda function. So I'll click on permissions and then I'll try and then access the So now this is the row that was created by a Lambda function. So what permissions do we need? Looking at our Lambda code, we need permissions to do some few stuff. So one, we need permissions to update our DynamoDB table. And then also, we need permission to send email using SES, that's the send email API. And then if the person chooses to reschedule, we need the permission to create a task for the agent. So we need an Amazon Connect permission, that's the start task contact. So just by looking through it, we can see the code, the permissions we need, right? So I'll come back to my page and then I'll proceed to add an inline policy. So I'm going to proceed to add the necessary permissions. So I'm going to search for the first permission. I'm going to search for connect. So we are going to look for the start task contact API. I'll select all. Then I'll proceed to add the next permission, which is going to be DynamoDB, because you'll be updating the database after reaching out to our caller or our patient. Select update item. Click all. Then I'll add the next one, which is sending the email. So I'm going to search for SES. For send email. Select all. Then I can proceed to click on next. So I'm going to call my policy process connect response policy. Your policy can be any name, and then create it. Now our permissions are ready and then fixed for this second Lambda. That's the process connect response Lambda. And then now So as you guys remember, there were some few environment variables that we didn't replace. That is the connect instance ID, contact flow ID, and then the source phone number. So we are going to now move into Amazon Connect instance, and then we can proceed to populate or do all this. So I will search for Amazon Connect. Alright, so I have an Amazon Connect instance ready created. If you don't have an Amazon Connect instance and you want to know how to create an instance, I have a short video. I'll do all to leave that video in the video description below, so you can check it out. It's very short and very simple, and then you can create your own instance. So I'm going to click on my instance, and then if you look at my instance ARN, after the slash sign is where I get my instance ID. So I'm just going to copy this. I'll come back to my Lambda function where we have the environment variable, our connect instance ID, click edit, and I'll paste this in here. Then I'll save it. For now, I'll go to the process connect response lambda and do same. So I click on edit, and then it's the same instance ID. So I'm going to paste it under connect instance ID and then save it. So now back to my Amazon Connect. I'm going to log in into my Amazon Connect instance. So there are two ways. If you have a user in there, you can quickly log in using this URL. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to use the emergency access to log in into my Amazon Connect instance. So there we have it. So this is our Amazon Connect interface. Yeah, I'll be making a series of videos on Amazon Connect, detailed from the very beginning and all that. So if you are looking forward to learn how to use Amazon Connect to build contact center solutions and all that, kindly feel free to like and subscribe to the channel, and I promise you I'll deliver valuable content for you guys. So first, what we are going to do is to create a contact flow. So basically, a contact flow in Amazon Connect is a way of you defining your customer journey or customer experience. So if you call into any call center, or if you receive a call from any call center, the experience you have are being managed through contact flows and stuff like that. So for our demo, we need to create a very simple flow. So I'm just going to proceed to click on create flow. And then the flow we are going to create, please ensure your flow is an inbound flow. It's a very simple flow. I already have the flow created. I'll quickly walk us through, since this class is not heavily, or since this tutorial is not more about Amazon Connect, I'll quickly import that and then explain what we are doing in our contact flow to you guys. So I'll import my flow. So this is my flow. So basically what is happening is I am setting login. So this block kind of allows us to log whatever happened in our Amazon Connect contact flow during the contact journey in CloudWatch log to help in our debugging process. So I'll just click on set login, and then I'm getting the customer input. So if you come in here, you realize that this is where I'm defining the customer experience. So all that I'm doing is you have an appointment, and then I'm reading out the date of the appointment, and then I proceed to ask them if they want to confirm, they should press 1. If they want to reschedule, they should press 2. And then I've done that basic configuration and all. And then proceed to set some few attributes based off the customer input. And then I proceed to invoke our processing Lambda function. If you remember, I said based off the experience we get from the customer, or based off the response we get from the customer, we process it using the processing Lambda function, and then we proceed to play a message to the customer based off their option. So if the person decided to reschedule, we then tell the person, thanks for your response. One of our team members will reach out to you shortly to help you reschedule your appointment. And then we do that. And then if the person wants to confirm, you have a message. Great, your appointment is confirmed. We'll be happy to see you then. So these are just random messages that I came up with for the purpose of this tutorial. And then in here, I'm doing some few loops and all other stuff. So it's a very simple contact flow for this demo. Yes. So I'll click on save. But as I mentioned, we are trying to invoke our Lambda, that is our process connect response Lambda function in Amazon Connect contact flow. And in order for us to be able to access our Lambda function, what we need to do first is associate our Lambda function with Amazon Connect instance. So I'll come back to my Amazon Connect instance page, right? So if you come to Amazon Connect, if you've lost it, you search for Amazon Connect, you select your instance, then I'll scroll down and then click on flows. So in this section, I have the ability to do the number of things. So I'll just proceed to do what we did. We want to add our Lambda function. So I'll click on choose Lambda function. Then I'll select the Lambda, then click on add function. So once I do this, our Lambda function has been associated with Amazon Connect instance. So now we can invoke our Lambda function through Amazon Connect contact flow. So back to my contact flow, I will click on this invoke and then I will select the Lambda function. So if you've not associated your Lambda function with your instance, when you click on the drop down, you won't see that Lambda function. So I'll select my Lambda function, click on save, click on save again, and then now I will click on publish. So now this is our first contact flow. All right, I'll proceed to create our second contact flow. So I'll come back to flows. And then I'm going to create another simple flow, which is also an inbound flow. So I'll click on create flow. I have that flow too on my local. It's very simple. In fact, I'm not going to import that. I'm just going to show you guys how to simply do that if you want to adjust something based on your experience. This is a very simple one. So I'll first search for my set login. And then what I want this flow to do is, if someone wants to reschedule the appointment, right? We said we want to create a task for a particular agent. And then the agents will rather pick up the person's details and then call the person from Amazon Connect. So we are going to create a task. So we need a flow that our task will point to. So now after setting my login, the next thing will be for me to set something we call a queue. So I'm going to set for set working queue. So basically, those of us new to Amazon Connect, a queue is more or less like a waiting area, right? If you call a call center, before you are being transferred to the agent, you sometimes sit at a waiting room where you hear music and stuff like that. So that space or that place, waiting area is where we call a queue in Amazon Connect. So I'm going to set working queue. And then I'll select the queue. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to use the basic queue. This comes by default, so you can select the same queue. And then in order for the agent to receive the queue, we have to transfer whatever is sitting in the queue to that said agent. So I'm going to select a block called transfer to queue block. And then I'll end it by disconnecting. So I just bring in a disconnect block. So this is very simple how you can build your Amazon Connect contact flow. You can do some fancy stuff for this. So I'm going to call this flow, before I save, I'm going to call this flow reschedule request task flow. I'll click on save. And then I'll publish. So now that I have my two contact flow, I can then proceed to populate our environment variables. So in order to do that, I'm going to start with our outbound flow. So I'll click on about this flow, and then I'll copy. As you see the ARN, the latter part of the ARN after the / is where you see your contact flow ID. So I need this, so I'm going to copy this. And then in my Lambda environment variable, I think we need a contact flow ID. So please pay attention to this. The various lambdas has different IDs that we are going to pass. For the daily reminder trigger, we are going to pass the contact ID for our main flow, that is the reminder outbound flow. So back in here, I'm going to paste this, and then I'll click on save. Now back to the processing Lambda. As you can see in here, we need a tax flow ID. So the contact flow we created for the tax, right? So I have this in there, about, and then I'll copy this. Please, if you have any question, feel free to drop it in the comment section. I'll do all to respond. Then I'll paste it in here. For this tutorial, I'm not going to use a tax template, so we can leave this as blank and click on save. So now we are left with our source phone number. So what we are going to do is to go back into Amazon Connect, and then we are going to claim a phone number. So I will basically come into the Connect instance. Down here, you will see phone number. I'll click on that. So what you are going to do is you are going to claim a phone number. So I'll click on claim, and then select voice, and here I'm going to select a DID number. The country, I'm going to select US, so United States, and then they will give me some suggested number, so I can select either of them and then claim it. If the numbers are available, I will get those phone numbers. So I'll click on save. Oops, so this number is not available. Good error to catch. So I'm just going to proceed to add some random prefix and hope to see if I get some few numbers around that line. Nope. 213. Oops. Let me see. 202. Yeah. Hopefully I get a number this time. Alright, so now I have a phone number in here. So I can copy my phone number and then come back to my dialer, and then I'll paste this phone number in there. Please ensure there are no hyphens and no empty spaces in there. So I'll click on save. So we're done. Now, so a quick run through of our code once again. So basically what we are doing is we are checking our database, and then we want to call all those people with their appointment set to pending and then the appointment due today. That is the set day, right? And then we are using the start outbound voice contact API. And then all the parameters we need is the contact flow ID, which we went ahead to create in Amazon Connect, the instance ID, and then the source phone number, the phone number that will initiate the call. Alright, so this is the first component of this. So now, one last thing we need to do before we proceed to test our application is, because we want our agent to be able to initiate outbound calls to our callers, we need to associate a phone number with the queue, right? So if you remember, when we were creating our task flow, we set a queue. And then for the purpose of this demo, because I'm using the basic routing profile and all that, that in turn uses the basic queue. So I need to associate a phone number to the queue to allow the queue to initiate outbound calls. So I'll quickly do that, and then we proceed to test our implementation. So I'll come here and search queues. I'll open queue. So now in our basic queue, I'm going to proceed to set an outbound caller number. I'll select the phone number we claimed, and then I'll select the default outbound flow for now. Just this should be enough. I'll click on save. So to test our application, since this is not a live system where we don't have any patients in our database, right? We currently don't have any patients in our database. I'm just going to simulate something and then add a random patient to the database, and then we can use that for our testing. So I'm going to proceed to create an item. This is just a test item. Yeah. I'll select this, do this. Right, so basically I'm just going to add a patient to our database. So I have a patient with patient ID P001, and the appointment date is going to be today, 27th. Some few notes, status to pending, and then a phone number. So this is a dummy phone number I have to a Google Voice ID. So I'm going to use this for the test. So you can easily create one test user in your account by following this JSON structure. Open curly brackets, and then you ensure you pass all these fields, and then you change the phone number to your personal phone number, and then that will be good. So I'll click on create item. So now I have one patient in our database. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to use my Google Voice. So the number that I inputted points to this Google Voice. So I'm just going to use this to receive the calls when the calls comes in. Alright, so now that our Google Voice is ready, I'll just proceed to test it. In order to test it, if you look at our architecture diagram once again, the call comes in to our daily reminder trigger Lambda, and then the Lambda is being invoked daily at a regular base. But for the purpose of the demo and this testing phase, we've not yet configured it to test at each morning or something like that. So I'm just going to use a regular Lambda event to test that. So before I test my Lambda function, I have to ensure the Lambda function is deployed. So I'm going to click on deploy. And then I'll look at my other Lambda function too, and then ensure that it's also deployed. So I'll come to the code. Then I'll deploy the Lambda function. Great, our two Lambdas are deployed. So I'm just going to come back to the daily reminder trigger, and I'm sure any event should do. For this case, any event should do. So I'm just going to create a test event, give it the name as test. I will save it. Now that I have my save, I can let me close it and then click on test. So by clicking on test, this is what happened. This is our response. So it went into our DB table, and then it got to see that there is one appointment which is active. So the phone call is coming in, as we can see. I'm going to accept it.
Press 1 to confirm, or press 2 to reschedule.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
You have an appointment on opening brace 2025 of 5/27 closing brace. Press 1 to confirm, or press 2 to reschedule.
So let me confirm.
Great. Your appointment is confirmed. We'll be happy to see you then.
Alright, so I think my network glitched a bit, and then because I'm using Google Voice, sometimes when a call comes in like this, it prompts you to accept some few stuff, and then the delay in my network settings too is preventing that. But we'll proceed to test it again. Let me refresh. Alright, let's check our DB table to see. So as you guys said in the latter part, it requested me to confirm, and then I went ahead to do that. And then we had the experience we defined in our contact flow, the confirmation stuff we saw. So let me refresh this. If it worked as it's supposed, there we have it. So now our appointment was confirmed successfully. Alright, I'm going to quickly change it and then do this demo again. So this time around, I'm going to do the confirmation again. Hopefully, it's much clearer. So I'll come back to my daily trigger Lambda, then I'll test it. So if you see the response, one appointment found, so they need to initiate a call. So the call has been initiated successfully to this number. So I'm going to accept.
Call from.
Confirm, or press 2 to reschedule.
To accept, press 1.
Or press 2 to reschedule. Great. Your appointment is confirmed. We'll be happy to see you then.
Alright. So still having some slow lagging and all that. But you all can see the system is working. It checks there to see and then it identifies that. So if I go into the DB table again and then refresh, you will see that the appointment is what's confirmed. That's beautiful. Alright, so we are going to test the second scenario. So as we saw in our contact flow experience, we mentioned that if the caller presses 2, we want the person to be able to reschedule, and then when they reschedule, we want to create a task for the agent. So that's what our Lambda is doing when someone presses 2. So if you look at the Lambda code, we're able to see that in here, that if they do that, you are calling the start task contact API. So I'm just going to show that case study, and then if there are any issues or something, we proceed to fix them and then see how best. But before that, I want to confirm something. So in Amazon Connect, all queues are being managed in something called routing profile. So basically, routing profile kind of shows how agents receive calls, from which queues agents are allowed to receive calls and all that. Because I'm using the emergency access, and then I have just the basic routing profile that is assigned to me. So I'll look into the routing profile and see if task is enabled. So please do that. And then also check to see if other channels are allowed. So Amazon Connect allows you to handle certain channel experiences concurrently. That is, an agent can be on both chat and voice at the same time, a text and voice at the same time, and all that. So just ensure you have allowed these things and that, and then ensure text is enabled here, and then click on save. So this is one basic stuff. So this is one, and the next thing is I'm going to open our agent workspace. So I'll click on agent workspace. So this is the agent workspace. So basically, agent workspace is where the agent has the ability to receive phone calls, tags, chats, whatever you configure your contact center experience for. So this is pretty much it. So I'll try and then test the scenario 2 quickly, and then let us see. So I'll come back to our Lambda. Let me check the database to see if it's still pending, so that we can at least get the call. So I'll invoke this Test. Alright, so the call will come in shortly.
Call from
To confirm or press 7 closing brace. Press 1 to confirm or press 2 to reschedule.
I'm going to reschedule.
Great. Your appointment is confirmed. We'll be happy to see you then.
Oops. Why is it still playing that the appointment is confirmed? Let me check the database. Alright, so the message indicates that it is rescheduled. So we will try and then debug together to see why we are getting it as rescheduled, but still gets appointment is confirmed. So I'll quickly try and see what happened. I'll go into my processing Lambda function, click on monitor. So guys, this is some of the things you do, right? So we are not getting the right message. If you look at our contact flow, what was the name of that flow? Remind the outbound flow. If you look at this, we are saying if the Lambda returns here, if the Lambda returns reschedule, we want to hear this message. Thanks you for your response, one of our team members. But we still are getting this message. So it seems something is not right, either in our flow or in our Lambda. I doubt it's the flow. So let's see what we were getting in the Lambda function, and then we can then proceed from there. So in our Lambda, that's the process connect response, view CloudWatch log. Right, so I think this is going to be the latest one. So I'll open that and see the event that came in from connect. So this is the event. Okay. So new status, we got this. This is the event. And then we are getting rescheduled. So that is working fine. I see we have one error too here. That has to do with SES. We'll resolve that later. So I've logged in here. I see new status to reschedule. Okay, good. So this first one place I can look at. I see we are getting the new status as rescheduled. That's fine. We will come back and then fix this error. Now I want to go in CloudWatch log again and then check the Amazon Connect contact flow log. So if you remember, I said in order to help us debug our contact flow issue, we bring the set login block and then that logs it in there. So I'll check to see if I will see it. So under the log group, I can see this connect log group, which is the Amazon Connect instance log group. I'll just select that and then select the first log. So this is just a simple debugging process that I want you guys to see. So I'll expand it. So this shows our experience, what's happened. So there we have it. So you see, our Lambda function, when someone presses 2, is erroring out because of this. So all this while that we have been testing, the Lambda is erroring out because the send email component is not working. But we weren't seeing this mainly because of this. If you look into the contact flow very well, you can see even if this Lambda returns, that's the response status, if it returns anything else other than these two, we are routing them to this point. So although the confirmation was working, but the Lambda in itself was returning an error. This is a really good catch. I'm glad we had this error on the live session. So the Lambda or the contact flow, although is handling that error, because all that we are saying is if the Lambda retain anything else apart from these two, it should play this message. So we were getting the message thinking that our contact center solution is working the way we want it to work, but it wasn't working that way. So what we have to do now is to fix our errors, and then we can see the next thing. So now let me look at the Lambda error again. It's saying error processing, blah, blah, blah. So what is happening is we kind of want to send an email, right, to this email address in here. But as I said, when creating that environment variable, before you can use a particular email, SES, in your account, one, you have to ensure that that email is verified, especially when you are using the sandbox version of SES. So I'll quickly go to SES, and then I'll verify this email identity. And hopefully this will solve the error for us. So our Lambda is cutting midway, so that's why we are not even getting the emails, and then also we are not getting the task because the Lambda in itself is failing. So under SES, what I'm going to do is to come to identities, and then I'm going to create an identity, a new identity. So I'm going to create identity, and I'm going to call this identity, I'm going to enter my email, and then I'll click on create identity. So once you create an identity, send an email to you asking you to confirm. So I've received that email. So if I show you the email, it looks something similar to this. I'm just going to click on this to confirm my identity. So now your email has successfully been verified. So I'll verify the identity. If I come to this page and then I refresh, oops, sorry guys, having a few network issues today. Alright, there we have it. So our identity is verified. So now I'm going to test it one more time to see if our Lambda is going to work fine. So let me come back to my DB table. So guys, this is how I want the tutorial to be, so that if there are errors, you will see where to look at it, and then when you are working on real world projects, these are the situations and scenarios that you'll be facing. Right? Okay, good. So I'm going to invoke again. Test. Good. Google Voice.
Call from
1 to confirm 7 closing brace. Press 1 to confirm, or press 2 to reschedule. Thanks for your response. One of our team members will reach out shortly to help you reschedule your appointment.
Great. So now, as you all can see, we are getting the necessary permission. So what that means is our Lambda is returning what it's supposed to return. So let me quickly look at the Lambda logs to see if we are getting any new errors or everything is fixed. Hopefully it's fixed. There we have it. So email sent successfully to this email, and then creating tasks for scheduling stuff too is successful. So everything is fine now. So to see our tasks, what I'm going to do is I'll come to Amazon Connect, and then I'll open my agent workspace. So basically, agent workspace is where you kind of handle your contacts, right? Where you receive your phone calls, your tasks, chats, whatever you have. So I'm going to become available as an agent. And there we have it. So you see a task coming in. So I'm going to accept that task. So now the task is in, and then this is the task details. So in our code, we were passing all this information, the patient's ID requested, rescheduling. And then if the agent wants to be able to call the customer to assist in the rescheduling, the agent will just click on the phone number, and then it will initiate an outbound call.
Please state your name after the tone, and Google Voice will try to connect you.
So you see the call coming in from our call center. So I can answer or I can decline.
Call from to accept.
All right. So guys, there we have it. Our solution is working perfectly and fine. Yeah, so the slight problems I was facing sometimes has to do with the Google Voice and all that. So if you are in the US or you have any number that you can use to place the call, just use that and then you should be fine. Alright guys, so this is our system working end to end. Now we're able to schedule it, we're able to do whatever we want, we're able to initiate the outbound calls also. So now I'm back to the last component of our whole implementation. So as we said, our daily Lambda function in real world, you are not going to invoke it manually by clicking on test each time, right? We want to add a trigger of a sort that will manually do that. There are a lot of ways you can do that. You can probably use S3 events where each morning you store data in S3 and then it will trigger the Lambda function, populate a database and do all that. So that's one case. Or you can set up an EventBridge notification where EventBridge itself will kind of initiate your dialer Lambda at a particular day or time or however you want to have it. So quickly, how you can create the EventBridge rule. So there are multiple ways of doing that, but easily we can do that by coming to EventBridge, so Amazon EventBridge. Then I'll click on create a rule. I'll give my rule a name. Description, I'll leave it as it is. Leave this as it is. So I want to schedule the event, right? So I'll click on next. Alright, so under the schedule pattern, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click recurring schedule, right? So we want our Lambda to be invoked daily at a set time. So there are two ways I can do this. It's either I set my daytime hours, define the expression, how I want it to work. Or I can also use a rate-based expression, right? Where I have it as after every 12 hours or after everything. So dependent on how you want to configure it, that works fine. So it's always what I want to do with my minutes is going to be 0 minutes. The hours, I want to invoke it at 10 a.m. And then the rest, I'm going to leave it as star and then the year to a star. Alright, so basically what this means is each day, right, if you look at the rule, it's going to call or initiate our target at this time or this set times. Okay, you can choose to set time frames. I'm not going to do that for this. Oh, sorry. So you let me select 15 minutes. So basically what this is saying is it's just telling the time the schedule is going to run, right? So I'm going to select 15 minutes. So in the time range, 15 minutes after that time is when I want to invoke the Lambda function. Now to the targets, I can select Lambda. So I see it in here. And then I will select the Lambda function, the daily Lambda function. If you had a specific event, right, that you want to pass, you would have just done that. But in our case, we don't really need any event. So any simple events will do. So I can just have an empty stuff and then it will still work. Yeah. Have any events payload and it will still work. So basically this is our review and creating it. So it's just a simple EventBridge rule where we are invoking it at 10 a.m. each day per the time zone we selected. And then we selected our Lambda trigger. And then we did all that. So I can now proceed to create a schedule. Alright. So now that is done. So this is the last bit of our whole tutorial. So you can adjust it however you want it. Yeah, this is very simple to do. So guys, there we have our system. You can do all to modify it, change it and all that. If you have any questions, kindly feel free to drop it in the comment section and I'll be glad to help or assist you with it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching. Catch you in the next tutorial.